Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this latest installment of the Senturus Knowledge Series. Today, we're very excited to be bringing you the topic of getting started with just enough data governance. As you know, data governance can be a big topic, and we're going to try to demystify that and skinny it down so you can figure out how to get started and leverage this important area of business intelligence in your organization. Our agenda today, after a couple quick introductions, we're going to get into, again, just enough data governance, talking about prioritizing data issues, gaining support, picking your team, and then executing and building momentum. After that, we'll go through a brief Senturus overview for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization and what we can offer you, as well as some free additional resources, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So make sure you stick around through to the end. I'm pleased to be joined today by Mike Biggenwald, my colleague. He has a 30-year career that's been focused on helping organizations worldwide make better decisions through the use of data, information, and analytics. Mike joined Senturus from Slalom Consulting, where he led the Chicago information management and analytics practice. Before Slalom, Mike was part of IBM's acquisition of SPSS, where he held a variety of global leadership roles in the SPSS professional services, training, and partner channel organizations. My name is Mike Weinhauer. I am also here at Senturus, and among my various responsibilities, I have the pleasure of hosting our Knowledge Series webinars. Now, before we get into the presentation, those of you who've done this before will recognize that we usually do a poll and ask our audience for some feedback about their organizations. And today's question is, what are your data issues? This is a multiple choice question, so please select all that apply. Is it defining the metrics that you need to have governed or that you want to surface? Master data management, establishing a single source of truth, data quality, and or data access / security / privacy. So go ahead and get those answers in here. And it's quieting down, so I'm going to close this out and share it. So data quality leading the pack, followed by establishing a single source of the truth. But really, all of these had pretty substantial representation. So that's interesting to see, and I would say, from my perspective, not super surprising in terms of the results. But thank you for sharing your feedback. That's always good to see what's going on with our clients. So with that, we're going to move on to the next slide, and I'm going to hand the baton over to Mr. Biggenwald. Mike, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. Just a quick welcome to everyone who took some time out of their day today in this January day to join us for this topic, and also welcome to those of you that at some point down the road downloaded this and wanted to learn a little bit more about data governance. So today, that's what we're here to talk about. So just to sort of set the stage, I'd like to share just a few facts that we uncovered in thinking about coming out and talking today about this topic. What we've seen, there's just been a dramatic cultural shift with the explosion of data being created. It's becoming available in a democratic way across organizations. You've got self-service environments, really in organizations of all sizes, from startups to the largest enterprises. This shift has caused a lot of firms off guard. It's led to mismanaged data assets and poorly defined metrics and uncontrolled access authorizations. These things causes delays and confusion, poorly informed decisions, and and there's cases where data breaches have resulted in legal liabilities and such. So there's a lot happening in the data space today, a lot happening in each of our organizations, and so here's some facts and figures that we uncovered. According to one study that we found, the self-service BI market size has been estimated that it doubled in size from 2016 through this year. That's compound growth of 15% annually over a 5-year period. So we're seeing consistent ongoing growth and really an acceleration there of that growth. Some other data points. Matillion and IDG came out with a survey that said data volumes are growing at an average of 63% per month among the organizations that they spoke with, and fully 12% of those organizations were doubling the data volumes in their organization on a monthly basis. That's just almost unsustainable growth. Another data point we found, reportlinker.com reports the data lakes market, the market for data lakes, growing at a compound rate of 27% from 2019 to 2024. They're seeing continued demand and growth in this space. It's 237% growth over that time. Operator error. Okay, so another study found that mid-sized organizations between, say, 500 and 1,000 employees, when they had a data breach, the typical cost of that data breach was over $2.5 million or $3,500 per employee. That's really tough for a small organization to recover from when you have that sort of hit to your bottom line. We spoke with Microsoft, and they tell us that Azure, just since the pandemic started less than a year ago, or about a year ago now, they've witnessed a 775% increase in demand for cloud services at Microsoft. So just a lot going on. And this all sums up into one really large number here, $500 billion. That's what the cloud migration services market is expected to reach by 2025. It's well over $120 billion today. So there's just a lot of activity going on, and people realizing they need to manage their data differently and in a better way than perhaps they have before. So you registered and you made the time to attend this webinar. So I'm gonna make a few assumptions. One, I'm gonna assume that you have an interest in introducing data governance into your organization. Whatever your role is, you can play a part. You know that, right? You may be the CTO of a regional manufacturer, and you're expanding rapidly, and you realize you need to address some customer master issues before they get any more complicated. It might be a business analyst, and maybe you're tasked with figuring out why your reporting does not agree across departments and data sources. It's possible you may even be a compliance officer, at a small bank, and you're concerned that too many people have access to just too much business information across your organization. So there's a lot of different roles you could be playing. A couple other assumptions. I'm also going to assume that you've probably investigated starting a governance program in the past, and probably seemed just too complicated, involved, and time-consuming and expensive. And this page that you're looking at here on the screen, really demonstrates sort of the key components of a good, solid data governance program that we've talked about in other webinars here at Senturus, and I encourage you to go check those out. Data governance can be complex, and it can be appropriately so. It can be a very big undertaking involving dozens of people across all levels of your organization. But if the title of today's webinar caught your attention, you probably joined us because you feel a little bit like this fellow here, right? I don't know if he's a cat or what he is, but just overwhelmed, right? Seems like a lot. And you probably dialed in because you want to hear what we have to say, what our thoughts are about just enough data governance. So for the remainder of this hour, what we're going to talk about is just really some simple, actionable steps to start your organization on that journey to data governance. Before we move on, though, just to be clear, we at Senturus, we believe that a robust, well-structured data governance program is essential for a firm to really be competitive in this data-driven economy. So what we're sharing today is just a starting point, and the idea is to make incremental progress towards your long-term data goals. So here, on this page, we see a pretty typical definition of data governance on the left side of the screen. It's data governance is a framework for ensuring the availability, accuracy, and security of data across an organization. I think we can all agree that's a pretty generic definition, and it's accurate. Frameworks are an important and useful way to break down large programs, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time going into deep frameworks today. Instead, we're going to take the lessons that we've learned through the data governance work we've done, and a lot of the work that we've done, over the last 20 years, helping companies grapple with tough data issues and with all sorts of challenges regarding data in their organization. And we're going to bring some useful ways to leverage the key components of a data governance framework to get started. So just as we get into this, then there's some concepts that I'd like to discuss. And I had a manager once that summed up getting started on any daunting task like this. She said, you don't need to boil the ocean to make a cup of hot tea. We've probably all heard that metaphor before, and I think we all get what it means. So I'll stop there, and I won't subject you to an extended tea preparation metaphor or anything, but note that that concept has merit, right? And so we think about Agile, that Agile development methodology for software really follows certain concepts that are useful for making a large project bite size and to keep a project on track and to deliver incremental value throughout. And Just a few of those concepts that we're going to subscribe to, that we do subscribe to at Senturus, and then I'm going to refer to today. The first one, MVP. The concept, it's a key concept in Agile. It's the idea of targeting as a goal development of a minimal viable product, right? It's just a deliverable increment to something in the Agile development process. So it's just enough to prove out a hypothesis, make incremental progress towards a larger goal. And so with that, we're going to take that concept and we're going to think this this light framework as a governance process MVP, but rather than a product, it's a process, right? So we're talking about minimum viable process as our MVP. This will give us just enough to prove value. Gives us an opportunity to course correct early in the development of a full governance initiative, and it all while delivering incremental value at every stage of the initiative. Just a few other Agile concepts that I want to talk about here for a second. We adopt the concept of sprints, where simply that's just breaking a project down into 2 or 3 week work plans, really with the goal of delivering a working solution to whatever was fit into that work time by the end of that cycle. Scrum, you've probably heard of that before. If you're not super familiar with Agile, most people have experienced that or seen it. That's just those daily 15-minute meetings in the morning. They're often called stand-ups. And the idea there is you get that core team together to discuss what's accomplished yesterday, what's being worked on today, and just work through any blockers towards progress. And then just the last concept that we will subscribe to here in this conversation is around backlog, and backlog is really just a prioritized list of items to be worked on in each sprint during the project timeline. So our late framework then consists of 4 areas of focus to get started with what we're calling just enough data governance, right? That MVP, if you will. We'll spend the remainder of our time discussing these 4 areas. So given that we talked about prioritization and backlog, let's start with prioritizing your data. And just to note, in a typical data governance framework, you'd establish the need for governance first. You'd gain support from the organization to gain funding and gain resources to build a team, and then that team would get together to the hard work of issue prioritization. Because this is an MVP, minimum viable process, it's not a full-throated governance initiative yet. You should start with just a short list of topics or issues of concerns. They're probably on a post-it note on your desk, or certainly it's the discussion that you've had with some of your colleagues, which is one of the reasons why you probably showed up here today. But when you get this list together, it gives you something to work from to create a case for support and involvement of resources from other parts of your organization. So just in terms of prioritization, there's a few things, and they are a bit pulling against each other, but really important. When you're putting this list together, you need to be pragmatic, right? Because this is an MVP, it's not a full-fledged program. So what is something that is doable and is also has some sort of value to it, right? You don't want to bite off more than you can chew or take on too big of an initiative at the first, but you do want to go something that's relatively low hanging, right? Something that's obvious, and it's one of those items on that post-it note that I mentioned, or it's something that certainly is a known issue. And then the third piece is it's got to actually provide some sort of value, right? It's a key data issue that actually does drive a difference. So with those kind of competing priorities in mind, you want to think about, well, what is it that we have to work with? And some of the issues that typically come up around data elements for data governance include metric definitions. Just where you have different numbers with the same name, different definitions of the same metric in different reporting in different parts of the organization. You might be dealing with hierarchies, or trying to get control of master data, or your customer master. You might have different databases with slightly different data sources, or you're looking to establish a single source of truth, or one place to go that has been certified as the correct definition. You might be dealing with data quality issues, cleanliness issues, those sorts of things, access to data, compliance issues. There may be privacy concerns between GDPR, HIPAA, PPI, PIA, PII. California's got a new privacy initiative. There's just a lot of privacy concerns that can result in real legal issues for an organization. So there's a lot of things here to consider when you're creating that initial prioritization list. Today, for as an example, we're going to follow just this real simple example of standardizing a set of metrics. We'll go with customer success metrics. They're pretty easy to understand, and a lot of people have worked with them. And we're just going to create a really simple dictionary of governed definitions, and then show you the process to get to that. And just to extend the example then, let's say we're talking about a mid-sized software vendor. They're struggling with customer churn even as they grow new subscribers. So it's a kind of a classic leaky bucket scenario. So to actually get down to the prioritization exercise, what you do is you say, what is the most important criterion for prioritizing governance, right? You want to identify and prioritize what's to be governed. So how do you do that? Well, you identify, you get that list together, establish just some criteria, make it quantitative, right? So we can actually score these, and then we'll map them out rather onto a kind of a simple 4-box matrix of value versus feasibility. And so in this example here, you can see on the left side of the page is really some value measures that we're going to score. These metrics in the scorecard you see on the bottom right side of the page. Across the top on the right side, those are feasibility measures really around the effort and complexity to make these changes, to address these issues. So won't spend a ton of time on this, but just walking through how we approach this. And this is a very simplified approach, obviously, but starting with business value, what does that mean, right? What are there direct impacts to customers, to our channels, to our operations? Does this include some sort of production or process that gets impacted? These sorts of questions. And we'll just take a simple 1 to 5 scale and say 5, absolutely critical to operations of the business. 1, didn't even know we had it, not important to us. And you assign some values to that. And the way to think about that is, how many of these direct impacts do we have to customers and channels and such? Who's impacted across the organization? You may want to ask a question like that. So breadth of use is really important. Just to understand, is this kind of a one-off metric, or is this something that impacts multiple departments? A few things to note with that, though. It can impact a small number of people or departments and still have a very large business impact. And at the same time, broad use across an organization really doesn't necessarily mean that it's a high priority item, but this is something you want to address and discuss and capture probably as much as anything, because this is where you're going to find where those same metrics, where the same named metrics are attached to various definitions across departments. So this is part of your research here as much as anything else, and it helps you really understand the impact to the organization. And then when you're value exercise and scoring, you want to look at anything else that impacts your business. And in this example here, we're choosing regulatory compliance. And while maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for these metrics, the point is there's going to be something, or there may be several things in this area that are just unique to your business that you want to make sure you capture. In this example of risk and regulatory compliance, it's just binary, 1 or 0. Either this is something that is used in some sort of risk mitigation that we are operating with, or maybe some regulatory reporting that we have to do. Whatever the reason, that's something that we need to flag as an important value. You may not have this as one of yours, but know that this is flexible and something that you can choose what's important to your business. So then on the across the top, we're really talking about feasibility here, right? And a couple of key things that drive feasibility is what's the effort, right? Just the amount of time it's going to take. You can measure it, in hours, days, sprints, whatever's right for you. But how long is it going to take to research and document, implement and communicate the impact of these changes across the organization? And again, just use a simple 1 to 5 scale. 5 being, you can define that as being over some number of hours, and 1 being less than some, and spread it out. Just to, again, the goal here is to stratify out these different metrics. And the second half of that, then, that feasibility measure is complexity, and that's different than the actual effort. This is really reflecting just the complexity of bringing a data element into being governed, and it's the, what are the people and systems involved, how many reports and processes are impacted, those sorts of things. Just how complicated, what's the level of complexity to make these changes. So if you look on the left side, then we've got our scorecard here filled out with the value scores for each of these metrics, as well as the feasibility scores, which gives us the opportunity to map onto that simple 4-box matrix that you see on the right side of the page here. You know, in the upper right box, it's you know, sometimes referred to as the magic quadrant. That contains the elements that this exercise identified as being both of high business value to the organization, as well as being, you know, relatively easy to accomplish, relatively, compared to the other items that were measured. And so if you actually just take those and map them out, I mean, a simple Excel spreadsheet, right? This isn't any sort of rocket science here. You can stratify out those different metrics, and you can see the opportunity to address, say, customer acquisition costs and net promoter score, the two that are the highest to the right and top of the chart there, stratified out. In a real exercise where you're going through, you know, many metrics, this will you'll see metrics and measures across all 4 of these boxes, and it really gives you an opportunity to stratify where to start. But before you do that, there is sort of one last step that's really important to take, and that's just to kind of review, make a final prioritization of this list through I guess a business lens. And there's 3 components to that I'll talk about. Risk, and what I mean by risk is, what's the risk of implementing this change and the impact of the business, or the risks that the business might be exposed to, but what also is the risk of not doing something, and quantifying that, or really understanding, recognizing what that is important. In addition, then you do want to measure the business impact, right? What's the business effort weighed against the benefits of mitigating the risks above and delivering on this? And then the final lens that you want to make sure that you're thinking about, and this is really for any activity you do in your business, of course, is there strategic alignment? Are we addressing the data issues that are most directly impactful of our strategic direction and the strategy that the company is implementing? And with those, then at that point, you've got a prioritized list of data issues. And so you're equipped with some tools and evidence you need to work on gaining support for this data governance MVP. You know, good chance, because you're here, there's already a grassroots support for fixing some of the obvious or glaring data issues that are out there, but there's a few groups of stakeholders that really need to be supportive, and you need to make sure that you've brought them along on this if you want this to succeed. And you know, while you may personally believe strongly in your analysis and you want to get started on the items in that magic quadrant right away, you know you can't go it alone. And for any data governance initiative, even an MVP like we're discussing here, which is pretty lightweight, you really need to have active support from at least these 3 groups of stakeholders. And there's a chance that you're probably one of these, you represent one of these groups of stakeholders. So it's really a matter of identifying the remaining people. And who we're talking about here is, you know, senior leadership, IT teams, and business users. These are the 3 key groups in your organization that are going to be impacted, and for an MVP, certainly need to be part of this process. So just talking about senior leadership for a second, they're really key to success. I mean, without senior leadership support, it's really unlikely that a data governance program will get very far, because this is change, and change is hard, and any change in an organization that impacts large groups needs to have that the support from the top, right? So that the organization knows to get behind it. And so when you're talking with senior leadership, the few things you want to talk about, you want to emphasize that people's behaviors are governed, right? It's not really data that's governed. Data is managed and handled by people, and so it's those behaviors that we're really talking about here. You want to emphasize this will be lightweight, right? It's an MVP today, but you know, even a full data governance program, it doesn't have to blow up your current organizational charts or move people off of the priorities that they're working on today. You just need to provide some structure and support to help people do this better. That's what we're asking from senior leadership. Tell them it doesn't need to cost a lot of money, right? Incremental improvements can be made by improving processes and just supporting people in the jobs they're already doing. And you know, senior leadership, they're going to want to know if the expense in time, the expense in opportunity cost, and the real dollars that will be spent on this justifies the effort, right? So you need to be prepared to talk some numbers and what the return on this investment would look like. And in our example, let's just say the senior leader is going to want to know that our customer success metrics are accurately representing our success or challenges in reducing churn. So that's their goal, is they want to know that what they're looking at is accurate and it's actually representing their net promoter score and their churn. The second group that if you're not part of, that you will absolutely have to gain support from is IT. They're an essential partner in this. They have access to the source data and the systems. So when you're looking for help and you're bringing on board support from IT, you want to talk with them about, they're going to want to hear clearly defined accountabilities and responsibilities. They're going to want to understand who's got what roles, how are they defined around data assets, what can be prioritized. They're going to want to understand how this will impact their workloads, how it will impact other priorities that they're held responsible for, and who's going to do the hard work of rolling this change out, so updating the reporting, the training, and the communication. And then if you're not a business user, when you talk with the business users and you're looking to gain their support, you have to realize that the business users have a very vested interest in data quality, because their career is based on their performance, and their performance is based on decisions they're making using this information every day. So to them, it's the utmost importance. Business users are going to be interested in how this impacts their ability to do their job. They're going to want to know specific, like how it impacts resolving specific known issues. They're going to want to know what's expected of them in the process and what the commitment is. Ultimately, they want to make better, faster decisions. They want to have more certainty in those decisions. They want to reduce the risk through data quality, consistency, and security. That's what they're looking for. Okay, so in building that support for data governance, you've actually started the process of building your team, because those same groups of stakeholders that you wanted support from are going to have some skin in the game, right? They're going to be represented and participants in this process. And so, just like we talked about, IT teams, business users, and senior leadership really make up the core data governance team in any initiative, and certainly included in this MVP. So, two roles that are probably the most important to talk about today are data stewards and data owners. And data stewards, they're the people who have responsibility for the day-to-day management of the data resources. They could be the data producers. They know the systems, they know how to access those systems. They're responsible for quality of a defined data set, really on a day-to-day basis. They're working closely with the data owners, who we'll talk about in a second, to address data governance related issues. The data owner then is really the primary data user and a data consumer. They're the representatives from the data, the domain or subject area. They're the experts on how the data is used and what it means. So they're the ones that are creating, reviewing, adhering to data definitions. They're accountable for quality of assigned data sets. So it's up to them to make sure that they're using good data. And they're working closely with those data stewards then to address those same data governance related issues and activities. Those two roles tend to come from the business and IT. It really depends on the organization and where they sit and what specific parts of the organization are involved in a governance initiative. The third area, though, that is consistent is that representation from senior leadership. I had mentioned earlier that that's really critical for any major change like a governance program would be. They ultimately in this model, they have oversight responsibilities. They're run or members of a data governance committee, which is really, it's made up of those kind of strategic senior level representatives from all the stakeholder areas, business and IT and others. They're kind of that primary issue resolution body, right? So really, senior leadership is there to coordinate, drive cooperation and communication across the organization. In a full-fledged data governance program, something we don't talk about in this MVP model, but in a full-fledged program, there's also another level up, executive steering committee, which is made up of the most senior enterprise leadership. Think the C-suite in a corporation. And typically this is an existing group that meets on a variety of steering topics, and this would be added to those regular monthly meetings or whatever their cadence might be. Their role is to support, sponsor these governance initiatives actively. And ultimately, they're the ultimate decider when it comes right down to it, right? I mean, if you can't make a decision by them, then they will make a decision for the group. A good way to think about who does what is by creating what's known as a RACI matrix. And you've probably seen something like this before. RACI meaning identifying who is responsible, accountable, who's consulted, and then who is simply informed throughout the process. In a formal data governance program, this document can look very complicated. It can have multiple tabs and different level, different roles and responsibilities and accountabilities based on parts of the organization, based on types of data element, et cetera. So this very simple example here, we're showing where the data steward is the responsible party, the data owner is accountable, and this is really what we're talking about here is that example of the data definitions and making them consistent. At this point in your data governance MVP, you've identified an area to focus on. You've gained support for this initiative. You've got key stakeholders in the organization on board. You've recruited some people to actually help you do the work and the effort. Now's the time to execute, right? Now's the time to actually put all this work into action. And so you've identified your target data elements, right? You've prioritized where to start. You've decided on one consistent definition for your organization and gained agreement. You know where and have documented what and who will be impacted by the change, what reports, where they are, any other uses for these data elements. So you're ready now for the last step, and that's to deploy your newly governed data elements into your organization. In this case, we're deploying these newly governed customer success metrics into our operational systems. So, this is a non-trivial activity, even for an MVP. It often involves groups that maintain data sources of record, data marts, your data warehouse, those that generate and update reporting, maintain data sources for self-service. Really, anywhere that these metrics touch the organization, you're going to have to touch in deploying the metric. And that's why it's so important that for an MVP especially, you think about the complexity and you think about just the reasonableness of the ability to launch one of these. But this is where the hard work pays off, right? This is where you see the tangible output in the use of those governed metrics. And so following our example here, very simple definition lists for given that this is an MVP, we're keeping it very simple, right? We're not going to produce an array of documentation like I showed you on one of those first slides this morning. We're going to just focus on one deliverable in this case, and that's getting that customer success data dictionary out so that half a dozen or so data elements. We've identified the owners. We've got a written definition. We've got the calculation and the single source of truth location all laid out here. So what this becomes, this data dictionary, or what it is, this very simple version is the foundation for building an entire governance program, because this is what you can use then as part of the MVP to prove out and demonstrate the value and tangible output of a governance program. All right, this is something that's very controlled in a small enough sense that it's something that you can use to make your case. And it really should be used to actually deploy these agreed upon definitions. I wouldn't just use this simply as an example. All right, so by following this data governance MVP with a very simple framework, you've been able to prioritize your issues, gain support. You've got a team in place. You've actually been able to execute on something and show value. Now's the time to build momentum, and do that by sharing what's been accomplished. Go out there and measure the impact. Quantify the return on that investment in data governance so you can follow up on those initial conversations with the proof. Show the benefits. Be ready to propose your next area for governance, because when you show the results of this, there's going to be a lot of excitement in your organization. This is where you can continue to build on this MVP. You can slowly or rapidly ramp up data governance depending on your needs and your organization's ability to do that. At the very least, you want to take these learnings and drive towards more conversations and more awareness of the need and value of data governance programs in your organization. So that really leads us to, are you ready to get started? And I recommend you do that. You probably have that list. Identify those areas to address, make your case, recruit your help, and get your momentum going, right? We shared pieces of our playbook here on approaching data governance. Try it for yourself. Senturus would love to help you as well. We've got a lot of experience in this area, and we could help you accelerate that. Mike, that's what I've got to share with the team today. I'd love to hand the reins back over to you.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. What a great presentation. Please do get your questions into the question pane, and we will address those after just a couple slides about Senturus. But as Mike said, there are a lot of areas where it's a great idea to have help getting started on this process or wherever you are on the journey. And we can help you wherever you are, whether it's doing that health assessment up front, that governance health assessment, whether it's establishing that minimum viable process or MVP, up to and including prioritized governance programs and training and education as you roll it out to your organization. So wherever you are, any and all of those things, those are areas that we can help you with. First, couple quick slides before we get to the Q&A and about Senturus. We concentrate our expertise here at Senturus solely on business intelligence with a depth of knowledge across the entire BI stack. Our clients know us for providing clarity from the chaos of complex business requirements, disparate and ever-changing data sources, and constantly moving targets. We made a name for ourselves because of our strength at bridging the gap between IT and business users, and we deliver solutions that give you access to reliable, analysis-ready data across the organization so you can quickly and easily get answers at the point of impact in the form of the decisions you make and the actions you take. Our consultants are leading experts in the field of analytics with years of pragmatic real-world expertise and experience advancing the state of the art. We're so confident in our team and our methodology that we back our projects with a 100% money-back guarantee that is unique in the industry. And we've been doing this for quite a long time. We've been focused exclusively on business intelligence for going 2 decades now, over 2 decades now, working across the spectrum from Fortune 500 companies to the mid-market. Like, you can advance the slide if you want. Solving business problems across many industries and functional areas, including the Office of Finance, sales and marketing, manufacturing, operations, HR, and IT. Our team is both large enough to meet all of your business analytics needs and yet small enough to provide personalized attention. A couple of quick extra resources here. We encourage you to visit the senturus.com/senturus-resources link, where you can find hundreds of free resources from webinars like this one on all things BI to our fabulous up-to-the-minute, easily consumable blogs. We have an upcoming event there. If you go to senturus.com/events, you'll see that our next event is Cognos Data Module Architectures and Use Cases. We're delivering that at our usual time on Thursday, February 11th. So you can head over there and take a look at that. And you can bookmark that as well, check back and register, and you'll be alerted to other upcoming events. I'd be remiss, of course, if we didn't talk about our complete BI training across the top 3 BI platforms, Microsoft Power BI, Tableau, and IBM Cognos Analytics. And we offer that training in those 4 modalities that you see, making us ideal for organizations running multiple platforms or those moving from one to another. And we can provide training in any of those modes and can mix and match to suit your user community and training needs. And then lastly, before we get to Q&A, ton of different resources again on senturus.com. We provide hundreds of free resources on our website and have been committed to sharing our BI expertise now for over a decade. And with that, we're going to jump over to the questions. So anybody who has questions, please get them into the question pane and we'll try to get to them. We have a little time here. First question is really, what do you do if your partners have competing priorities?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's probably something that each and every person will experience, right? Because we've all got very full plates. I would say that certainly for an MVP, the point is finding like-minded individuals, right? And people who have a similar sort of outlook on the need for governance in the organization. So I would say if the people that you're working with have competing priorities, that's part of the prioritization process, right? In the planning process, and how large you make each of your sprints, how much goes into that prioritized backlog at any one time. So it's flexibility, right? Being MVP, minimum viable process here, you do want it to be as sort of low impact as possible, but at the same time, you need people who will be committed to being involved actively to make this successful.
Great, thanks. How about what is senior management? What if senior management doesn't recognize the issues or understand the importance?
Yeah, I would jokingly say maybe it's time to look for another job. But in all seriousness, it's not unusual for senior management to be insulated from a lot of these issues because people in the organization typically when they're dealing with data quality issues, certainly, or questions about the validity of different metrics, well, they have workarounds. Everybody has their little workaround, and that's what I mean by those, sheets of paper, post-it notes on your desk. You may be remember to look for, for this number in report A versus these other metrics in report Z. I think the best thing you can do is collect this evidence, right? And that's sort of the purpose of the MVP actually is to create the case so you can take it to senior management to really paint the picture in a way that they understand around the impact on the business and the cost of doing versus not doing.
That's a good answer. With regards to sort of sussing out that minimum viable process, how long does a project like that typically take, ballpark?
Yeah, that really depends on how long that prioritized list that you come up with is, right? But I would recommend that for an MVP, you can really get that done in 8 weeks or less, just if people are not dedicated to it but working consistently. Because really, what you're doing, there's a few steps here we talked about, right? And one of them should take a lot of time if this is truly MVP. I would say that in terms of the agile approach, a couple sprints, right? Maybe 2 sprints, and you've got enough evidence there to then make your case for either rolling out what you found and measuring those results, or for moving on to a broader either making a decision either way, right? Either moving on to a broader type of governance initiative or deciding that you don't need to. I mean, that's a possible outcome as well.
Sure. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be this all-consuming eternal project. You can take it on in sort of bite-sized chunks.
And that's the goal exactly with an MVP is bite size. That's a good way to put it, Mike. Thanks.
A question here where this gentleman is saying that he has senior leadership support for data governance, but only because they want their 3 a.m. request done, their 9 a.m. request done by lunchtime. And when he tells them that it actually means doing a development cycle that takes or when I tell them that it actually means doing a development cycle that takes 2 to 8 weeks to get into production, how do I keep support when their expectations don't match the time to do it right?
It's an age-old problem, isn't it? That's a tough one. I mean, it's again, the whole point of the MVP is collecting quantified evidence that you can present to management to help explain the process, B, the impacts, the costs, and the outcome. So there's not an easy answer to a question like that. That's a tough one, right? But it's really, again, the whole point of doing something like this is it's low impact and you're able to collect in a relatively rapid amount of time at a relatively low cost or low, effort for the organization, some good data points to make some decisions on investing in one of these programs.
Yeah, and being able to document exactly what that process is going to look like, or at least frame it up to help demonstrate why you need the resources you need to do it right, and that you're not just sort of padding your numbers or pulling them out of the air.
Absolutely.
Probably easier said than done in a lot of cases. Thanks for that question. Then once you sort of roll this thing out, how do you ensure that people are following the procedures once you've rolled them out?
Sure. I mean, in a full-fledged data governance program, you're going to have those roles of data steward and data owner kind of consistently in place. Those roles manage, maintain. You can either do it, simply through Excel spreadsheets, those sorts of things. I don't recommend that if you've got a large, complex organization. But there are tools out there like Calibra and others that help you manage and actually govern the use of data through certification of reports and certification of data metrics, certainly publishing and making known, at the very least, the single source of truth for each metric is the best way to facilitate adherence to these. End of the day, though, this gets back to the senior leadership in every part of the organization, of being part of the program and asking for the governed data points and the certified, if you will, metrics.
Great. Well, thank you for those questions. Thank you all for your participation. And that's all the questions that I have here in the question panel here. So we can advance to the last slide. And of course, firstly, I'd like to thank our presenter, Mr. Biggenwald, here today for a fantastic presentation on making data governance more manageable and bite-sized. And with that, we'd like to thank you, our audience, for, again, as Mike said earlier, taking time out of your busy days to spend an hour with us here to learn a little bit about this topic. Please do give us a call. If you go to the last slide, Mike, we have if you still pick up a phone, the 888 number there, or you can email us at info@senturus.com. And again, bookmark our website and check out our upcoming events. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on another one of our Knowledge Series events. Thanks a lot and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.